Welcome back to another edition of the Saturday to Sunday Football Podcast. I am Paul Perticchese, and I am once again joined across the way by Mr. Jeff Abercrombie. Jeff, week 3 college football in the books. Week 2 of the NFL concluding as we're recording this Monday night doubleheader tonight. How are you doing this evening?
I'm doing well. This one goes out to my wife. We said it last week. It's really hard to coordinate the kids' schedules and the naps and everything. And she goes, picks up Neely, takes her out to the park, gives me a free 30, 45 minutes here to talk about football. So I am very lucky and I'm feeling grateful today. And it helps that I'm in a good mood because football was a great weekend for me too. So
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, the support that we get from our loved ones make this even possible with the busy lives that we have away from football and away from talking about this and having a good time for sure. So let's get right into it. Week 3 to college football, a lot more to talk about. Some really star-studded performances again by some really recognizable names, some new people that we haven't talked much about that kind of thrown themselves onto the radar a little bit that, we got to get some better eyes on. So let's jump right into it. We'll start with the NFL draft report where we kind of talk through our S2S teams of the week. And these are draft eligible prospects. So let's kind of get right into that. The first string quarterback of the week is Jaden Daniels out of LSU. LSU rolled 41-14 over Mississippi State. Jaden Daniels was 30 of 34, 361 yards and 2 touchdowns, 64 yards rushing and 2 touchdowns. I'm not sure I ever imagined Jaden Daniels having that type of passing stat line, when we watched him a couple years back at Arizona State. First string running back of the week this week is Dejon Edwards out of Georgia. He helped Georgia after a little slow, sluggish start against South Carolina, win 24-14. He had 20 carries for 118 yards and 1 touchdown and dominated the backfield work. At wide receiver, first string of the week, Malik Neighbors out of LSU. We already talked about Jaden Daniels' performance. Malik Neighbors had 13 catches, 239 yards, and 2 touchdowns for the guy I consider the number 2 wide receiver in the country. And then at the tight end position, another reboot from a couple weeks ago. Ben Sinnott out of Kansas State. They lost to Missouri, but he had 5 catches, 78 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Jeff, I'll open it up to you. Anywhere you want to go there with anybody from the first string.
well, let's start with the pass catcher quarterback combo of Jaden Daniels and Malik Neighbors. So yeah, I mean, we talked very brightly about Keon Coleman. I mean, his stock was on the rise, right? But we talked about where he might fit in this class of wide receivers. We know headlining Marvin Harrison Jr. And I think Malik Neighbors is just saying, don't forget about me, man. And that is a headliner type performance that he put together there. And again, just credit to Jaden Daniels for being able to, to provide that there. Like, I think I was pretty critical of him to start last year. I don't think his play at the beginning of last year was at the level it is right now. And I think, one of the things that I feel bad about, like, we missed the storyline of his improved play over the course of last year. And so, really credit to Jaden Daniels for being able to come in and really start where he left off, right? Not a regression, being able to continue to build upon that growth, right? And so, a huge credit to Jaden Daniels. I mean, he basically pitched a perfect game.
Yeah, I mean, it was an incredible performance. And, listen, like I said, I just didn't really think he had that in his arsenal. We saw improvement, but 30 out of 34, I don't care what level you're talking about. 30 out of 34 is an impressive stat line. And yeah, Malik Neighbors, listen, since before the season started, when we did the wide receiver show, I have him right there. Like, he's going to be a top 10, top 12 pick, I think, in the 2024 NFL draft. We know Marvin Harrison Jr. has a legit chance to be a top 5 pick. I think Malik Neighbors is very much in the mix to be a top 8, top 10, top 15. I think that's your trajectory and how explosive a playmaker he is. And you put up that stat line, it kind of really shows that he's the complete package. He can win inside, outside. He can win in all three levels of the field. He can win after the catch. Really a complete player that I think is going to just continue to see his overall. I think most people look at him as a round 1 guy, but I think he could even push his way into the top half of round 1 and maybe be even in the top 10 consideration. If I kind of transition this over to Dajan Edwards, what was nice about him is, like, we know the Georgia backfield is production waiting to happen. And we talked about Kendall Milton a little bit on the running back preview show before the season started. We've kind of been waiting years for Kendall Milton, and he just really hasn't materialized to the player we thought. And then Edwards, in his first real opportunity this year, in a spot that Georgia really was struggling for a while there, like, to chip in 118 yards, 1 touchdown, the 5'10", 200-pound back. Clearly, they looked at him as the guy that they were going to feed the other day because, he dominated the backfield touches. And I think that resonates, when you're talking about Georgia, usually loaded at the running back position, for Edwards to come in there and sees that, I thought was significant. And then Ben Sinnott, again, I don't think people are talking much about him. People know Jatavian Sanders. People know, obviously Brock Bowers. But I think Ben Sinnott's got a real chance to be the 3rd tight end in this class. And I think he could be a guy who's squarely on the day 2 mix. And I said from the first week recap show, I think Ben Sinnott's, the offense runs through him in K-State. And you don't really see a lot of college passing offenses where the offense is really ran through the tight end. And that's the type of role that I think Ben Sinnott is really, we've seen now over multiple weeks already in the early portion of this college football season. So impressive performance by him. Again, Jeff, any thoughts there? You want me to take the second string?
Well, just a quick on Dajan Edwards. That's one of those ones where I really need to get my eyes in on him. But this is the alert. This is the call. This is the ring of the doorbell to say, he's entering the conversation.
Yeah, for sure. So let's take this to the second string team of the week at the quarterback position. We just can't get away from talking about him. It's Shadu Sanders out of Colorado, 43-35, double overtime victory over Colorado State, 38 of 47, 348 yards and 4 touchdowns, doing most of that without his star player, Travis Hunter. We'll talk more about Sanders momentarily. The second string running back of the week is Blake Corum out of Michigan. He helped Michigan cruise to an easy 31-6 victory this past week. He had 101 yards rushing and 2 touchdowns. But I think the significant thing is, Donovan Edwards has really not got off to a big-time start. And there was a lot of people, Dane Brugler, other people, that had Edwards right there with Blake Corum entering the season. I know you had some reservations. Right now, we haven't seen Edwards really seize that opportunity. Corum right now has been the more productive back. The second string wide receiver of the week, back to that Colorado State game. It's Tony Horton out of Colorado State, 16 catches, 133 yards and 1 touchdown. And then the second string tight end of the week is Jaheim Bell again out of Florida State. He helped Florida State hold off Boston College 31-29 as Boston College had a furious comeback in the second half to almost pull off the major upset. He had 5 catches, 76 yards and a touchdown. For me, let's talk about Sanders for a second. It's remarkable what we're seeing him do without Travis Hunter. They fall behind, on the East Coast. I threw in the towel, unfortunately, around midnight, and I recorded the rest of it just because with the young kids, I needed a couple hours of sleep. And I woke up once, I rolled over bed, looked at the score, and they were down 8, and Colorado State had the ball with 3 minutes left. And I was like, man, I can't believe Colorado's going to lose this game, only to wake up in the morning and find out what happened. 98-yard touchdown drive, the clutch type performance we like to see, doing it without his star wide receiver. He has people like Mel Kiper, who we know Mel Kiper is locked in, saying he's QB3 in this class. He doesn't see that changing. And if he decides to go back to school, he's already saying he thinks he would be the first pick in the draft in the 2025 NFL draft. Kiper is not someone to just throw things out there, he's the GOAT. He's the OG, in draft stuff. So he's putting that out there already. This is after only a few games at the Power 5 level. So Sanders just continues to blow me away with his poise and composure. We'll see the next couple weeks. Oregon and USC without his star wide receiver. It's going to be a real challenge. Can he keep them competitive in those games? I think would continue to speak volumes for what he's doing this year. And if he pulls off an upset in either of those games, you're going to start seeing him as legitimate in contention to win the Heisman. And that's how wild of a start it's been this year. Jeff, any thoughts on Sanders? Just because, I mean, what we've seen every game from him has just been truly remarkable.
I don't know. I hear he's texting with Tom Brady now. So, I think that carries more weight than even Mel Kiper's ringing endorsements. I think the minute I saw Mel Kiper mock Mac Jones to San Francisco, I think I lumped him with Adam Schefter and everyone else in the book. And I say, you don't know ball. But yeah, I mean, just a 98-yard drive, game on the line. Like, I was really in on Jake Haener last year, who became a mid-round pick, for someone without all the tools. Watching a performance like that, him pull Fresno State in to win a game against adversity and odds. I think it was injured. That moxie that's going to get you drafted, even if you don't have the tools. Now put the package together that Shader Sanders has, and I certainly think I'd probably take him over in the 2025 class, along with a few other of the quarterbacks this year, if they choose to go back. We might get to some of them later, but right now we just have question marks with Alar and Klubnik and maybe a few others, for the Devy draft eligible players. Yeah, if Sanders came out next year, he's easily the front runner. If it's him and all the underclassmen. I'm going to kind of go in and just say, Jaheim Bell, he's always been a fascinating name with the type of athleticism he brings. It's great to see it emerge on the field. We mentioned it last week with tight ends. How is that utilized on an NFL field? Like, I really want to see him get into a creative play caller's game plan, and I don't really care when it is in draft capital with regards to tight end. I think he's just that kind of player who can show up on a field and then start making impacts, Darren Waller-esque. But I want to spend the most of my time here talking about Blake Corum, because it's not anything against Donovan Edwards. I think Donovan Edwards is really good for what he is. I mean, he's a home run hitting back and amazing in space. We just see Blake Corum play the position that, as Michigan needs it in a complete, well-rounded manner. And he's outplayed Donovan Edwards. And, I even kind of got a little bit of a conversation back and forth, people who have just been off Blake Corum because, Donovan Edwards was, the promise, and with his, home run athleticism, we just drool over that open field, explosive playmaking. And we just sometimes lose the forest for the trees, when Corum is out here just making guys miss at the line of scrimmage, earning extra yards and hitting these big plays, 12 for 101 and 2 touchdowns. It's not like he's some scrub either. I wouldn't be surprised if we see more Edwards as the season goes on, because I think that's going to be Michigan's key to success when both of those guys are going. That's how we saw them close out Edwards, to be able to come in and show more than he's doing now. But I don't think that's at the expense of Corum, because Corum just picked up where he left off after suffering the injury last year.
Yeah, it's been a great start for Corum. Great to see him back from that injury and doing what he does. And listen, I think people are down on him, but I think the people who know, I go back to, he was number one on the Dane Brugler's running back board. And I think Dane does his own scouting, but also, it would be impossible to have the connections that he has and not at least maybe at times be a little influenced by the people that you talk to, the pro people and stuff, and he had Blake Corum number one. So I think that speaks volumes that the people, most in the know, really like him. I think sometimes the Devy community, they're always looking for that new shiny toy and the one that stands out most on paper, like traits and stuff like that. But, I think Blake Corum is the kind of guy that, the vision, the patience, his ability, the natural run instincts are right now far superior than his teammate. And I think that's going to really, win him over in terms of NFL scouts and evaluators. Hopefully, injuries is not something that creeps back up. It's going to be fun to kind of watch Michigan and see if they can, ride him, and JJ McCarthy's playing well, and, and see how far it can take them. Last one I
Yeah,
want to
well,
mention.
just like
Yeah.
last comment, because I think it's paralleling something I saw a couple years back with Najee Harris, right? We liked Najee. He returned to school, and then everybody kind of fell off to this, like, well, why did he return into school? He's playing a senior year. Maybe he just wants to go for a championship, XYZ. But everybody's kind of got like these little warning flags in their head without the realization that he's just a really good player who decided to go back to school and play another year, and also played really, really well. But he never really picked up steam until he really became, until the draft buzz really picked up on him and he became a first round pick. And I think that's what we're probably going to see the path for Corum is, eventually the drumbeat is going to be too loud come draft season, and we come to the realization, whether you do before draft or you get hit with the harsh reality after the NFL draft, that Corum is one of the top backs and will be selected, before a lot of other big names.
Yeah, listen, I'm right there with you. Totally agree. Tony Horton, I want to mention him. That performance, I said 16, 133, and 1. I'm pretty sure he's on Bruce Feldman's freak list. He's a really athletic player. Last year, missed some time due to injury, and he's back now. And he's a guy who, before this is all said and done, we're talking about a guy who I think could be in the day 2 mix for sure. And he got some national tension this past week, obviously, with all the eyes on that Colorado State game. It was impressive to see him kind of ball out in that game. Before we take this over to the S2S Devy team of the week, honorable mention, two new names really in terms of the draft eligible guys at the running back position. Damian Martinez out of Oregon State. He helped Oregon State this past weekend secure a victory 26-9 over San Diego State, 15 carries, 102 yards. So that's a running back I want to get some more eyes on. I thought that, kind of popped off a little bit. And then at the wide receiver position, Nate McMullen out of UNC helped UNC win 31-13 over Minnesota. He had 15 catches for 165 yards and 1 touchdown. He's on the short side, 5'8", 180, but we saw the connection Drake May had with Josh Downs. He might be looking at a guy like McCollum as his new Josh Downs for this year, and we'll be interested to see if this is something that Nate McMullen could, kind of have some success here consistently. He only had 1 catch in his previous game, and then explodes here for 15. So he's a guy to keep on our radar for sure. Let's take this to the S2S Devy team of the week at the quarterback position. You mentioned his name before, Cade Klubnik out of Clemson. He helped Clemson win 48-14 over Florida Atlantic. He had 169 yards passing and 3 touchdowns, another 35 yards rushing and 1 touchdown. The week before that, he had 315 yards and 4 touchdowns. So rebounding from a shaky start that he had in that week 1 game versus Duke. Running back position, Trevor Etienne out of Florida. Gators had a big win over Tennessee this past weekend, 29-16. He had 172 yards and a rushing touchdown. At the wide receiver position, no tight end really stood out, so we're kind of cheating. 2 wide receivers on the S2S Devy team of the week. Luther Burden out of Missouri, 7 catches, 114 yards and 2 touchdowns. And Tet McMillan out of Arizona, 6 catches, 89 yards and 1 touchdown. Jeff, any quick thoughts on these Devy guys? I know Burden and McMillan real high up in Devy wide receiver ranks. They lived up to the billing this weekend for sure. Any thoughts on them or either Etienne or Klubnik?
Well, I think this might have been Burden's biggest game in his career. I know his freshman year was generally quiet despite, showing some of the promise. I just don't think Missouri ever really got that going. 7 for 114 and 2 touchdowns is the type of Evan Stewart like production we highlighted last week, that really shows why, that tandem, why Stewart and Burden are headlining a really strong 2025 wide receiver class. I just don't want us to lose sight of Tet McMillan at all. We watched Jacob Cowing before he returned to school. We watched Dorian Singer. Tet McMillan was someone who stood out when you were watching those games. And I believe he's on, some really high profile Devy Raiders as well. Um, One of those players that I love the way he wins at the catch point. I think his route running is sound. Um, I think he's going to be a really good player. I'd love to see how his game evolves from here.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun to kind of watch. Listen, we talked about Evan Stewart last week, and then Burden and McMillan today. I mean, Borden and McMillan today. We're talking about, Burden, McMillan, and Stewart and even Travis Hunter, we could throw in the mix too. We're talking about 4 of the top Devy wide receivers. Like the wide receivers, we just feel like we keep churning them out. Like there's just more star-studded ones after star-studded ones. And even this past draft class, we didn't think it was going to be so great. And there's so many of them dominating already early in their careers in the NFL. And this was a down wide receiver class. So maybe that's the perfect transition to the NFL rookie report for this week. We're going to talk to about 4 or 5 guys, but rather than announce a rookie team of the week every week, we said it's going to be, like you said last week, the quarterback position is going to get repetitive and just rotating through the 3 young rookies. Same thing with the tight end position. Right now, Bijan would probably be the guy we're talking about every week, the running back. So we're just going to talk about, throw out some names, numbers, and talk about the key things for this week from week 2 of the NFL season in terms of rookie performances. At the quarterback position, CJ Stroud, 384 yards and 2 touchdowns. I've been really surprised and some of it's game, the flow of the game, but I've been surprised at how much they're willing to let him throw the football. They're throwing him to the fire and seeing what he can produce. Anthony Richardson looked amazing until he had to leave the game with a concussion. He was on his way to a monster fantasy and real life performance, 2 rushing touchdowns, showing that before he took the hit on the second rushing touchdown to get a concussion. Bijan continuing to do Bijan things. It was like 170 almost total yards, 23 touchdowns, helping Atlanta get to a 2-0. Jahmyr Gibbs off to a slow start, but David Montgomery's going to be out a couple of weeks. Let's see what kind of role Jahmyr Gibbs has in the run game. But he did have 9 targets this past week, which led the way for the Lions. We know that's going to be, his bread and butter as the running continues to evolve there. We might see some Eric Gray this week. Saquon Barkley injury. We'll keep a close eye on that. And at the pass catchers, I mean, what Puka Nacua is doing is just remarkable. 15 catches, 147 yards. The best performance, 2-week performance from any rookie wide receiver in the history of the NFL. Jaden Reed, 2 touchdowns, being used in a variety of ways and alignments for Green Bay, helping, offset the loss of Christian Watson early in the year due to injury. Tank Dell, we talked about CJ Stroud, his running mate there, Tank Dell. They have a good chemistry already. 7 catches, 72 yards and a touchdown. Noah Brown now on IR. Dell's going to see a lot. He's going to be their 3rd wide receiver and continue to eat into getting looks there. And then Jalen Hyatt only played 14 snaps, but impactful snaps, saving my Giants season this past weekend. 2 catches, 89 yards. They got to find a way to get him on the field due to his explosiveness. Right now, people just can't stay with him. That speed that is translating, and it's why teams love speed so much. He's showing why, the impact that you can make even in limited snaps. NFL teams are craving it. And then Dalton Kincaid, 5 catches, 43 yards. Heavily involved. They're running a lot of 12 personnel, him and Dawson Knox on the field constantly. So he's not really being asked to block much. They're making use of his pass catching ability, which is what they should be doing for sure. So Jeff, a lot of ways you can go with this. Stroud, Bijan, Gibbs' role with Montgomery out, Jaden Reed or Puka, wherever you want to go. A couple key guys here that I think we could probably expand upon a little more even.
Look, I mean, Tank Dell, I think he's breaking odds with his stature, but it's something that you absolutely love to see in a changing NFL. As long as Stroud is slinging it nearly 50 times a game, like there is going to be fantasy value because his play is a huge upgrade from last year when it was the Mills and man, I can't even remember who they subbed in for Davis Mills, but Stroud is a big upgrade there, and 50 passes from him can actually support fantasy options like Nico Collins. And I think what you see with those reps is growth. So like keep it coming. I'd love to see that. Jaden Reed taking advantage of this opportunity. Now, seeing Green Bay, and their offense operate, I do think, every one of their pass catchers and, Jordan Love is a stock up to me. But one of the things is I was really big on Jaden Reed. I thought he had an opportunity to become the Chris Godwin to the Christian Watson, Mike Evans, the more trusted third down target possession guy. Looks like even give him some of those pop passes, get him into open space and on field, all things he does really well. He can be an engine of the Green Bay offense that I think can operate with multiple wideouts, with both having fantasy value. I think that would be at the expense of Romeo Dubs, who I believe got injured as well. I thought maybe he went out for a little bit. Maybe that's why we see a little bit more Jaden Reed this last week. Dalton Kincaid, again, all of the rookie tight ends, I see a lot for Sam Laporta. They're doing well. It's an anomaly, but it's one we like to see. I love getting, new trends for the NFL. So seeing, rookie tight ends, contribute for their teams. Again, growth is up ahead, but I don't think we can leave this conversation without talking about Puka Nacua. I think the best discourse that I've seen out there right now is Puka isn't playing the Cooper Kupp role. He's getting Cooper Kupp usage, but he's playing it in a Robert Woods role. And he's doing stuff that McVay liked to do with, a younger Robert Woods on, the star-studded Rams team when it was him and Cooks and Cooper Kupp, all playing, extremely well out there. I think Puka had some end arounds, he's playing on the outside. I mean, we could see a really high-powered Rams offense if Puka and Cooper Kupp are both playing at elite levels here. I think this spells great things for Matt Stafford. I think it rejuvenates the energy for the Los Angeles Rams. That was a franchise that people were starting to feel a little bit down on. And, this is a jolt of electricity. I don't think you break Anquan Bolden's rookie receiving, 2 games in, but I don't think you break that record accidentally. Yeah, I bet you a lot of those targets are, San Francisco giving up the underneath zone stuff. Sure. But that's 15 catches for 147 yards. I think he was probably like the leading receiver on the week. He's definitely the leading receiver of the first 2 weeks. And regardless of whether you're just getting dump offs, you're not getting 150 yards without playmaking ability. And it's really what we're seeing there. And he's opening up the offense. He's opening things up for Kyren Williams to play well. I think we're going to see Cooper Kupp come in, and I think this offense could be extremely dangerous.
Yeah, listen, what he's been doing is truly remarkable. And why don't we just use that as kind of the transition point to the Dynasty Stock Report for this week in terms of our final segment. And on the Dynasty Stock Report, I haven't updated the ranks yet, my Dynasty ranks, and I haven't even updated my rookie ranks. I want to get that done. I have a long weekend here. So, next weekend, I'm hoping to get that fully updated. I don't really know what to do with Puka Nacua in my ranks. I don't know what to do in my rookie ranks. Do we throw everything else we knew? And, does he move to Jackson Smith and the Jigba territory? Does he move ahead of Jordan Addison? I think it's a very tricky thing to kind of, it's such uncharted territory, this level of performance that where do you put him stacked up with the other rookies? Where do you put him stacked up? I know somebody had offered me a 2nd round rookie pick after the first week, and I was like, nope, I'm gonna, meanwhile, I took him in like the 5th round, and I was like, nope, I'm good. I'm not giving him away after that week 1 performance for a 2nd round rookie pick. And if the same guy came back to me today and offered me a round 1 rookie pick, I think I still probably would reject it just where we're at right now. So I think trying to find a value is very hard. And I think next week, if we kind of circle back in the stock report, maybe I'll kind of let the audience know where I kind of put him in my, I keep the rookie rankings going throughout their rookie seasons and the positional dynasty overall. I think he's a tricky one right now after these performances on just how much do we value these unbelievable performances to start his career against the fact that, yeah, he was a day 3 pick and Cooper Kupp is absent, and, how to appropriately value, I think, is a very tricky proposition right now. And then his teammate, you mentioned them, Kyren Williams, Cam Akers inactive. It's now Kyren Williams' show, at least for the time being, right? We saw Cam Akers go away last year and then come back later in the year. We kind of started this writing on the wall last week. We said you had to be realistic, and Kyren Williams was taking over this backfield. And I think the bigger question is now, does he have staying value? I know he has staying value for this year. I don't think that's going to change. But like, is he a guy that could be a starting running back for the Rams, more than just this year? Does he have dynasty appeal for 2-year window? Or, I know we never like to think more than that for running backs, but like, how do we maybe appropriately value him? Any thoughts on valuing these two young Rams players that have really changed the outlook on what we expected the Rams to be early in this year, maybe the whole year, and especially without Cooper Kupp, and now it's totally been different. And these two guys are two of the main reasons why.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think if you're playing safe, taking a first round pick, especially if it's, not going to be at the very end, if it could be even early, that's the safe route to take, for trading away Puka Nakua. Like, hey, what if that turned into Marvin Harrison Jr., right? You're feeling pretty good. That being said, that's not fun at all, right? You took this guy in the 5th round. Like, why don't you see if you've got Anquan Bolden on your hand, right? I'm feeling that way about Brock Purdy. Why don't I see if he's Tom Brady? It could be, probably not, but why not? So I think if you're going to play it safe, like, you take the return on investment, but you have to kind of take that with, your own team. Like, if you're just looking for that electric piece, just write it out, because I really do think he and Cooper Kupp can exist really well together. Again, we saw Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods exist really well together. I think, that was at Robert Woods' start of his decline. Like, Puka Nakua is on the rise now as a rookie. Like, he's going to be getting better. So I'm all about holding and riding this roller coaster and just like making someone drastically overpay if they want to ride it too. As for Kyron Williams, man, I got roasted in my Scott Fishbowl chat because, I spent an inordinate amount of fab. I spent over like $60 of fab, to the point where I didn't even have enough to bid for Zach Wilson as the only starting quarterback remaining, just to get Kyron Williams on my team. And I dropped Rashad Penny for it, and I got roasted. And everyone's like, oh, someone picked up Rashad Penny as soon as waivers cleared. Like, what are you doing? 1 week later, and I'm looking like a genius here. Not that I predicted him to just completely crush San Francisco's, vaunted defense, because he was on my bench in all of my leagues. But he was one of my priority ads, and we talked about it after week 1. Like, I listened back to the podcast. We said, would you rather Kyron Williams over Cam Akers in redraft? Because that's what it seemed like the Rams were thinking, right? It seems what McVay was thinking. Turns out that was right. The Rams love Kyron Williams, and I think it's very similar to like a Damian Pierce type situation where, no, he doesn't have early draft capital. No, I don't even think Kyron Williams is a complete NFL back where he's going to just be able to take on a workhorse role for a team, for years. He might have that opportunity now, and he might have it next year. I do think other players will sprinkle in, but we know McVay likes him. That was the biggest thing we heard. And one of the things I took away from last year that I didn't want to forget was that the Rams were all in on Kyron Williams in week 1. And when he injured his ankle, it was a huge blow to the team. And all we see is them come back out now, start involving him from week 1, give him the backfield week 2. Whatever they don't see Cam Akers doing, they see in Kyron Williams. And I just think when we kind of take that into Cam Akers, I think the only thing we can hope for is a trade at this point. I don't think Akers is a bad player at all. I just think he's going to need a new, set of scenery. And, I drafted him in a bunch of places this offseason, just hoping that he got that workhorse role. And I just think the expectations really need to be adjusted, that he can still provide some fantasy value if he finds himself in a favorable new situation. But oftentimes in situations like this, when being traded to a new team, it's not always pretty. You get a Chase Edmonds like career trajectory sometimes. And we have to be somewhat cautious about, maybe taking what value you can get at this point.
Yeah, listen, I think if he gets traded somewhere, he's not going to step into a big role right away. Maybe injuries and depth chart can open up at some point down the line, but I think he takes a massive hit for where his current value is right now. You're not alone, and we didn't talk about this, but I spent 61 of $100 in one of my fab leagues for Kyron Williams, and I plugged him in last week. So when I found out that Cam Akers was inactive, so we were definitely there were some vibes, some Saturday Sunday vibes that we were putting in big bids there for Kyron Williams. Let's round it out real quick. Two last points in the dynasty one. One is don't lose sight of veteran wide receivers who could still produce at a high level, but some people in the dynasty circles so much value youth that they're sometimes really devaluing really good players to great players. And two guys that came to mind with their performances this week were Mike Evans and Keenan Allen. Nobody wants them in dynasty leagues sometimes because they're old, they're 30, whatever the exact age, 30, 31, whatever it is, but they're still performing at a really high level. And I think it's something that, you can sometimes find really good value when people are overvaluing youth and undervaluing really good players who are still productive veterans. And then the last point is I do think it's time to start, being a little bit more concerned that, and I'm a Justin Fields guy. I'm a fan. I love him coming out. He was my QB2 in that class ahead of Zach Wilson and Trey Lance and stuff like that. But we're not seeing growth and development at all. And we can blame the coaching staff and we could have that conversation. But it's not all on the coaching staff. It's not, a lot of it's on him. His clock is just slow to process information at the NFL level, and we are seeing him regress in areas and not grow and develop. That I think give me Anthony Richardson right now in Dynasty, not even a hesitation if I can make that trade. Give me Trevor Lawrence. I have a lot of concerns as much as I still believe in the player. I don't know if it's going to be a totally different coaching staff or regime. We got that a little bit, and we're still seeing some of the same issues. So I think it's stocked down on Justin Fields right now, and the level of concern, I think it's time to start rising. And the only reason why it hasn't been there yet is because how much he was beloved in the Devy community. I feel like the Devy community really holds on, and the fantasy community really holds on to their pre-draft thoughts. If this was Josh Allen doing this, if this was Daniel Jones doing this, if this was somebody like that who most of the community hated, there's no way people would be defending Josh Allen or Justin Fields or Daniel Jones for the performances, the passing performances that Justin Fields has struggled with over the last 2 years, even as he's been an impactful player. So I think it's an interesting thing there. Maybe just real quick, a Justin Fields thought, and then I'll close it out.
I'm a huge Justin Fields fan myself. I want to see his growth and success. I think the other thing kind of inflating it is the fantasy lens, right? He had a stretch last year of almost like 10 weeks where he was either like a QB1, the QB1 overall, or like a top 5 guy. And, all of that was on groundbreaking rushing. And we do need to see, the passing development work its way as well. I recall back to one of the episodes when, I think Matt was on with us too, and we were talking about Kyler Murray, and it was after his, 2020 season where he was, really emerging, as a player. And, the question was, I think the question was, could he be QB1 overall in Dynasty, over a Pat Mahomes, over a Josh Allen? The one thing I highlighted and why I hadn't put him in that tier was that development is not linear. It's something we say all the time here, and you see, we got really excited for Justin Fields, last year, right, where we see some really good dynamic playmaking ability in the passing game and this stellar playmaking ability in the run game. And we see what he could be, and he is becoming in front of our eyes before we hit a roadblock and we hit a stumbling block. And those stumbling blocks don't have to be permanent, right? Players can overcome that in their careers, but it's more likely than not they don't just hurdle those and keep growing into superstars. And I think that's the case we're seeing with Justin Fields right now. Is I don't know that this hurdle, especially with the trouble and the difficulty at the speed of processing, is one that he's just going to magically clear and resume that trajectory that he was on for us. You know, that the premature coronation of him as the next big thing in football, in fantasy football, and quarterbacking. I am rooting for that to happen. I really am. I just don't see it happen often with after performances like this. That's usually more of an indication that a player is stuck. And I don't frequently see players get unstuck from that level. And that's my biggest concern.
Yeah, and then listen, I think people, again, because they like him, because they want their pre-draft takes to be right, I think people just assumed he was going to make the Jalen Hurts jump this year. And I said, like, I thought people were way too high on him on redraft leagues this year because I just think people were assuming that jump. What Jalen Hurts did last year was unprecedented. That is not a normal progression jump to develop like that. And people just thought Justin Fields was going to be there, but he had shown nothing yet in his career as a passer to think that he was going to take that Jalen Hurts jump. And we were so quick to criticize the coaches, us included. What are they doing, Matt Nagy? But you know what? Like, we don't know the inner workings. Matt Nagy is not a dummy. He's worked with Andy Reid and Pat Mahomes and so maybe we thought, oh, it's just him, but maybe they were seeing something that Fields couldn't do a more elaborate offense that they wanted to. So they were putting together a really weird, watered down. Like, we don't know all the logistics of it, but now we're seeing another scheme that another organization, another front office, another coaching staff, another, still not get that elite level playmaker that I think people thought were there. We saw glimpses last year, but really we saw glimpses of him, his athletic ability, making plays that kind of made people forget that he still was very shaky as a passer last year.
Two points to close us up here. So one, I just talked about Kyler Murray, and look what we're looking at with Jalen Hurts. Like, he doesn't look quite the same player as Jalen Hurts last year. Not saying that he's hitting a wall the same way Kyler Murray did, but development isn't linear. It's not exponential. It's going to be up and down. And it's one of those things that we have to be ready for. We haven't seen Jalen Hurts hit that level of adversity yet. Right? How is Jalen Hurts going to respond when he hits the same types of adversity that Kyler Murray had to face? Yep. How did Kyler Murray respond? This is who they are as players. And this is the story of their careers. It's not written yet. It's still going. And one of the things that really helps that story is something we mentioned with Anthony Richardson last year. Or last week, we mentioned it with his marriage with Steichen, and just a perfect situation of helping a player be the maximum of who they can be, develop with using the strengths that they can provide on the field, using the tools that they bring, to support the rest of their growth and development as that progresses. And, maybe this is the situation where, Fields is going through times when he has that support and when he's got to do it by himself, which is a lot of things most athletes have to do. Most athletes don't get that level of support, and it's up to them to be able to figure it out. Oh, but it sure helps when they've got it, man. It sure helps when they've got it. And I think Justin Fields is trying to figure that out, maybe without that level of support that he's had.
Yeah, it's something. It's something missing. We can't pinpoint it. It's a long year, so we'll see what kind of happens here the rest of the way. I still love the player, and I'm rooting for him, but I think the level of concern is definitely been elevated. So there it is, guys. Another S2S Teams of the Week for the draft eligible guys. Devy Team of the Week. NFL Rookie Report, NFL Dynasty Fantasy Stock Report, covering a lot from the week 3 of the college football season and week 2 of the NFL season. If you're enjoying this content, please get over to the website, ssfootball.com. Fastest and easiest way to get to the website. Check out our premium content for $9.99. You get all access to all our premium notebooks. It is the best way to support the show and help us continue to do what we're doing here. So on behalf of Jeff, on behalf of our sound tech engineer, David Nicano, and myself, thank you for joining us, and we look forward next time taking you from Saturday to Sunday.